What's the secondary going to look like with all of these departures? We're going to discuss that coming up next year on Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Jay, what's the Oklahoma Sooners secondary going to look like? If you were to project a starting secondary, let's go with a nickel look where you get 3 defensive backs, or one of those is a cheetah, and 2 safeties. How are you going to make it look?
Man, it's going to be interesting. I guess the biggest question is who's going to make their valiant return. If we get the returns that I am expecting, honestly, and this is barring health,
of course,
Gentry, Eli Bowen is going to be your corners.
Please.
You're probably going to have Peyton Bowen as well as Robert Spears-Jennings at safety, because it sounds like
love it.
RSJ is going to come back.
Love it.
And then your cheetah, Reggie Powers III.
Okay.
I think Reggie Powers III is probably going to step up and be able to get that. I do see him rotating a lot with Kendall Doby for that cheetah spot, because Kendall is such a good blitzer. But RP3, it sounds like watching him play, he's shown that he can do very, very good in coverage. He can do very good in attacking the quarterback and blitzing and playing, and he also likes to hit people. So he'll tackle the running back, no problem. So he'll fill up those gaps. So that's the way that I have that landscape set up. I think you'll see rotations with Boganowski as well as Hardy up there at the top. Corner-wise, you'll probably see whomever is the next corner that comes in, within the portal, mixed with some Jacoby Johnson as well, as far as like your zones as well as your start. But I think that that's probably the way that your starting lineup is going to look. And it's going to be a really nice rebuild, even though you'll still have Peyton Bowen and Robert Spears-Jennings leading the top. It's going to be fun watching these young players get out there. And if Gentry comes back healthy, John, oh man, we're going to be cooking. Now, if he doesn't come back healthy, don't matter. I think that whomever we pick up from the portal and a refined Jacoby Johnson will show up.
Yeah, I think you're in a really good spot at corner, even though you have the loss of Kenai Walker, you have the loss of McCarty Vickers, with a 2 deep of Gentry, Jacoby, Eli, a portal cornerback, or Jeremiah Newcomb, Malik Hawkins. Like, the cornerback room looks pretty solid. It's young, but it's solid. I think it's one that you can win with, because we've seen Eli Bowen's competitiveness. We've seen what Gentry Williams can do out there when he's healthy. And I think Jacoby can continue to take steps. He had some good moments this season. He had some moments he's going to want to learn from and get better at. And I think you have something to work with. At safety, the talent is incredible. And if Robert Spears-Jennings comes back for one more year, I think he has a chance to really push himself into potentially being a top 40, top 50 NFL draft pick after or for 2026. But if you got Peyton Bowen and RSJ as your starting safeties, I think you're in a good spot. Where do you feel like Michael Boganowski fits in? Is he kind of the understudy to Robert Spears-Jennings?
Honestly, he feels like more of an understudy for Peyton Bowen. I feel like he's more of your strong, just because we know he likes to hit and come down the line and level somebody. Hardy feels more like you're free. He feels like one that can float around and find just find where the ball is and go out there and get you an interception. And so that's the good thing about the way that this team is set up as far as these young guys go. You've got a good amount of that getting that threesome of young safeties like that, especially because one of them, we were thinking that Boganowski would be in your cheetah, but we also know how difficult the cheetah role is, and nothing against him, but he seems like he's much better as just somebody that can come down and stop the run and hit somebody. So you take advantage of that. Powers the third appears to be the guy that's a little bit more versatile in that, but that's the good thing, is you can rotate those guys around. So you've got a good safety room, and then whenever you bring in the other players, you got in Marion Robinson as well as Marcus Rimbley, who both also like to hit people. They're going to be fun out there right behind them. So you've got yourself years upon years stacked of young, talented safeties that man, we should be fine for at least the next 3 years. The question's going to be, what does either 26 or 27 look like when it comes to that safety room? When you pick up more recruits at that point, what does Brandon Hall and Brent Venables do at that point? How does Zach Alley put these pieces together? That's really the question I have.
Yeah, and I think it'll continue to come together. As long as Brandon Hall is still coaching at Oklahoma, I think the recruiting will still be really good because he's been on fire since showing up in Norman. I could imagine, we've talked about it before, that he's potentially a guy that could end up getting a DC job at some point down the road. Jay Valai has done a really good job recruiting as well. When it comes to the portal, though, I don't feel there's this huge need to bring in a defensive back. And I know that feels crazy. If you're going to bring in somebody, to me, it has to be a legitimate frontline corner that is day one starter and a game changer, not somebody that's going to come in and be a depth option. You've got plenty of guys that I would rather those snaps go to that can compete and earn opportunities than to throw in another guy that is just a quote unquote depth option or somebody that you're not sure if they can be better than what you've already got in house. I'm content with what I've got in house. If you can get me somebody that's head and shoulders, legitimate, game-changing corner, then by all means bring him in, but don't just bring in a guy just to bring in a guy, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. You want to make sure that if you bring in somebody, it's got to be a game changer. It's got to be someone that's going to be able to fight for the starting role or take the starting role from somebody. So I totally agree with you there. I do want to make sure that we have some size and some guys that are some dogs. We need some aggression out there at corner. Probably the corner was probably the position that most on defense left more to desire. Even with Eli Boeing playing at a freshman All-American level, you still want, especially as a true freshman, that LSU game still left a little bit taste of, you need more. You need a guy that's a little bit more ready, someone to shut a little bit more down, which he will. That's something that he will build off of. He will build off that game. He will watch that film and he will grow. That's what you can tell out of his game. But no, I agree with you there. If you're going to bring in another corner, if Jay Valai and Brent Venables decide that we need to add some more and Zach Alley says, hey, give me another corner, they've got to be big. Is one. They've got to be over 6'1". You've got to have height and size, right? If you're going to add, nothing against Eli Bowen, but at his height, he's really good, but he's going to be placing a lot of mismatches on purpose. I know he'll win a lot of them, but he'll also be able to keep up with some of these smaller wide receivers, these slot dudes that's going to be bigger problems, or these outside guys that are just that talented, like a Ryan Williams. You're going to want some bigger corners that's going to be able to be a part of jump balls. And that's the thing you want to chase. So as long as they're big and strong, which I've seen a couple of names that have been floating around with our name around it. I saw one. It was Jaleel Hurley, the corner from Alabama. Seeing his name's been floating around social media, and he was one that really intrigued me because he's like 6'2", and he was a top 50 recruit when he came out of high school. Young, but he's someone that probably could fight for a spot. So the key thing here is, whoever we go after, just like you said, John, they've got to be somebody that's going to be able to walk in and play today.
Yeah, I don't want a progress stopper because you've had some of those guys, and it kind of kept guys like Jacoby Johnson from getting on the field earlier and going through some of those growing pains in non-conference play and being a little bit more ready to go down the stretch. You know what I'm saying? Like,
that's true.
You had some of those guys along the offensive line. Don't bring me any progress stoppers. I want guys that are legitimate starters, not guys that you hope will be starters. Because if you want somebody to be a starter, just use the guys you got in house.
Agreed.
And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. We'll continue to touch on the transfer portal. That'll be a big topic of discussion here on Locked On Sooners. We're going to have to talk Malik Murphy because the former Duke quarterback has entered the transfer portal. We'll do that on the next show as Oklahoma potentially looks at quarterbacks for 2025 with new offensive coordinator Ben Arbuckle. But follow Jay on Twitter at Unfair Sports. Follow me at John9Williams. Check out his channel, Unfair Sports, on YouTube. You can read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. Also, check out our social media channels on Twitter Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Locked On Sooners, where we'll interact with you over there as well. So again, subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast, free and available on all platforms and on YouTube. Until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. We'll talk to you then. Boomer.
Sooner.